The Apple Cup is nearly upon us. It's time for some keys to the game.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another Friday edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. We write for Inside the Huskies of Fan Nation Sports Illustrated. You check out our written work over there at si.com/college/Washington. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Lars, it's time to just jump right in here because we are previewing the Apple Cup. The Huskies have a chance to go 12-0 in the regular season for the first time in school history. Then let's start, as we always do, on the offensive side. What is your first key to the game for Washington to get this victory over the Washington State Cougars?
I mean, I think we've said it the past couple of weeks, right, where it starts with the run, but I think even more so than that, I'm not going to go there again. I'm not going to triple down, but I think it almost just starts out just with executing the offense, right? I'm going to make it even more simplistic, right? Just get those first 7 to 14 points on the board. You should have, especially with Wazoo scoring defense, giving up, the 14, 42, roughly around 30 plus points a game, right? If you take out two of the last 3 games. But for the most part, especially against good teams, I mean, they held Colorado, though, I think 14 or whatever. But the point being that it's like,
you did say good teams, so.
Right, exactly. So exactly. So, Washington, and you go back to the game last year where Michael Penix kind of was off a little bit early, took him a little bit to get dialed. And then the second half, the floodgates just opened up. I think, especially for how this team played against Oregon State, you want to just get, 21-7 at halftime, 28-7 at halftime. You just really kind of build that lead to where you can build on it in the second half in a way like Michigan State, right? I mean, that's not the best example. Maybe Cal, right? Where it's like you put them away early and you keep them away in the second half. Your last game of the regular season needs to be your best complete game. And this is a perfect opportunity to do that, right? Where Washington State, they have some good pieces. Brendan Jackson scored 2 touchdowns on fumble recovery. So there's, if you open the door, Washington State can take their chances. But this matchup, especially with everything riding on it for Washington, I mean, Wazoo is playing for a bowl game, but the point being for Washington, just get the offense in rhythm early, whether it's to Jalen Polk, Odunze, Jalen McMillan, Dylan Johnson, just something to where you're not putting yourself behind the sticks, right? And, we'll get to the defense in a bit, but even no matter who starts with the ball, right, you would think that even if Washington State scores, if they get the ball first, you should be able to go 2 consecutive drives, add some touchdowns. And the other thing about Washington State's offense is they play pretty quick, so you will have more possessions to do that. Take advantage of the possessions that you have, which you didn't do against Oregon State, and you haven't done consistently throughout the season at times.
Right. And you're right. And I like that we kind of have gone away from, talking about establishing the run, which is an every week thing. Because it's something we talked about on our Wednesday show that we did this week, where this kind of almost feels like a game where you want to pass first. Because we talked about Dylan Johnson's injury and how he might not be able to play in this game. We'll kind of see what his status is probably by before the game starts on Saturday, a couple hours earlier. Obviously we'll hear about before the game starts, but there's going to be a certain point where we will just kind of learn more about that. But if he's unable to go and it's Will Nixon and Tybo Rogers leading the way, that feels like a bit of a significant drop off, especially in terms of between the tackles and what the Husky run game is able to do. So it does feel like a game where we saw Jalen McMillan kind of struggle to get back into rhythm against Oregon State. Some of that probably had to do with the rain because he did play a whole lot more snaps. So that's one guy that I'm really going to be looking at in this game as somebody who, okay, let's see if, he gets a couple of targets early, gets a couple of catches, and just kind of gets his feet underneath him early on in the game and just see, because he's going to be needed in the Pac-12 championship game. You can't kind of say, all right, that's the game we're going to work him back in more. No, he's got to have a little bit of a buffer to make sure he's back at 100%, move in and just kind of integrated in the offense by that point.
Right, and exactly. But to your point, you don't want to overwhelm Dylan. He doesn't need to get 20 carries, probably doesn't even need to get 15. Just get him between 5 and 10 carries because he should get about 50, 60 yards with those carries. and then mix. And this is honestly kind of a perfect opportunity to where you can get Will Nixon and Tybo Rogers some more run, right? Where, hey, this is an inferior opponent. You should be able to beat them. These guys should be able to have their success. And especially for Tybo, when he's going to be in the program for a while, get him his first Apple Cup. Maybe he scores
right.
Preview for later, might score his first Apple Cup touchdown, first rushing touchdown of the season, right? He's been close, was close against USC, was close a number of times in the season, to where you get Dylan in the game, but you don't rely on him, right? Penix should be able to put Washington State away. But as I say that, Washington State's defense has only given up 12 passing touchdowns all season. This could be a game where Penix gets half of that in one game, or he goes for 4 touchdowns, 400 yards, and they mix in a couple of rushing touchdowns. But regardless, this is a game against the defense where you should be able to have success. This is not Oregon State. It's a good defense, right? It's a respectable. They deserve the respect, but it's not Oregon. It's also not USC, right? Where it's not going to be an easy blow, where you should get to 50 without even trying. But
Sure.
This is a game where there's enough talent on Washington, even guys that are dinged up. I mean, Jalen didn't practice all last season, not all last week going into the Apple Cup last season. Goes off for 120 and a touchdown. So I think there's certainly an opportunity for Jalen to kind of reestablish himself. Jalen Polk can prove that he can catch the ball, that things like that, where it's like, hey, just get the rhythm back a little bit. You won an ugly game. You won an ugly game against Arizona State. Kind of rid both of those with a blowout against Washington State in your last game of the season. So you have that momentum. Because, as I said on the Wednesday show, if you win the game 35-20, it's like, okay, or, 32-24 or whatever, you get a win, but it doesn't pass the eye test as much as it should, right? Where it's like, hey, this is Washington State. They don't even have a future home next season. You should, at least at the time of recording the podcast.
Conference home, yeah.
Conference home, right. So where it's like, they're playing for a lot of things, but at the end of the day, Washington's offense is still far and above better. There's no reason this should be a game by the third quarter.
No, and we've seen that time and time again in these Apple Cups, right? So it doesn't feel like you're going out on a limb saying that, where Washington has just for years now done this. And so it doesn't feel like it's that like much of a stretch to say that they can do that again, because this is not one of those games where it's, the players need to like find a little bit of extra way to get up for this game. They need to find a little bit of extra like momentum to go forward for this. So I like that a lot. And I'm just kind of in that same vein. I think that this is going to be a really big game for the offensive line, because Washington State is near the bottom of the conference in sacks. They're 10th with 22 sacks recorded this season. And so I think that that's something where, especially where we talked a lot about just how good the front's been all season long. Michael Penix has been sacked 6 times this year. So we kind of look at that and just say, all right, well, this is another opportunity for them to get right against, and before facing a tougher front, whether it be Oregon or Arizona in the Pac-12 championship game. So I think that this is one of those games where it's, all right, let's see what the offensive line can do. Just shore up. And Jake Dicker's a really good defensive minded guy. So he's going to throw some unorthodox things at Washington. I'm sure of it. But I think that they're going to hold up to that challenge really well and just kind of hopefully be clicking on all cylinders moving into the Pac-12 championship game. And speaking of moving in and moving on, we are going to switch over to the defensive side, as we always do here on Locked On Huskies. But first, it's time for a shout out to our good friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophies, also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Ready for the defensive side?
Yeah, well, and a perfect segue from our sponsor, eBay Motors. One of the guys that's had by far the best motor on the defense is Braylon Trice, and this is kind of a perfect
I respect
opportunity
this transition.
for Braylon Trice. I know I was working. That's why I was pulling up the stats as you were reading that ad. I was like, hey, let me just.
I like it.
Right. But with Cam Ward being an elusive quarterback, Chuck Morrell, the co-defensive coordinator and defensive play caller, likened Cam Ward, Washington State's quarterback, to Caleb Williams. Now, he's not, again, this isn't saying, oh, hey, we're facing Caleb Williams again. We're facing a Heisman. No, but Cam Ward is certainly one of the better quarterbacks in the conference, right? I think I would put him above DJ Uiagalelei at Oregon State, probably below Bo, Cam, and Michael, but he's right there, right? There's a number of other quarterbacks you could maybe make a case for, but I think Cam, as a dual threat, right? Not just as a passer, right? But his elusivity, his ability to make guys miss. And that's kind of where Washington has been burned at times, right? Where it's, we saw it against Oregon State where DJ was able to scoot for a couple of first downs. And those are those drives where, hey, instead of putting a team away, you're now letting them hang around. Maybe they still punt, but you're now eating up a couple more minutes of clock, which for the Washington offense is maybe 1 or 2 touchdown drives. So Braylon Trice has got four sacks on the season. Last sack came against Oregon State pretty early on in that game. He hasn't had a multi-sack game this season. I don't actually, and I'm trying to look this up as quickly as possible. So he had a sack against Washington State last season and did not have a sack against Washington State in the 40-13 loss in 2021 that nobody wants to remember. So I think in a way for Braylon, it's like, hey, you know what? Flush the 21 game out, get a multi-sack game. Just, he's not, as we mentioned earlier this week, he's not among the finalists for the Outland Trophy or for any awards, but he's a certainly highly respected player in the conference. And so it's like, okay, maybe don't take the disrespect, but take the extra motivation and say, hey, I had a 2.5 sack game against Cam Ward in my final regular season game at Husky Stadium. Go out with a bang, right? Maybe him and Zion combined for a couple of sacks. It's like you guys came back together, you held your own together, plant your flag respectfully on the field while the clock is ticking and get a couple of sacks. I think that's kind of where it starts for Washington's defense, because if you can force Cam Ward to either stay in the pocket or in combining with that, maybe forcing to mix in the run a little bit more, that plays into Washington's hand a little bit better. Certainly more so from the former point, where if you force Cam Ward to be a pocket passer or not use his legs as much, Gerard Muhammad, Elijah Jackson, Mish Powell, Cam Fab may or may not be back, but those guys should be able to eat a little bit more against a receiver room that's not necessarily going to scare you like Washington's or Oregon's or even USC's would, or even Arizona. Oh, I got to give McMillan down there. Arizona's probably in that group now too.
Oh, they absolutely are. And I think that one thing that I know you mentioned on the show the other day is that Chuck Morrell said that the closest thing that you can see in Cam Ward's game is Caleb Williams light. Basically, is the comparison he was making. And that's something Washington has struggled with at times, where containing him and keeping him in the pocket, as you said, is going to be really, really key. But it's just kind of, even if he is able to escape the pocket, which is going to happen at times, it's just making sure that you don't let him pick up big yardage with his legs. And that's where guys like Carson Bruner, Edifon Ulofoshio, Alfonso Tupatalo, Raylan Goforth kind of come into play here, is just kind of making sure that when he gets outside the pocket, you're able to close on him effectively, which is something we saw them struggle with against DJ Uiagalelei last week against Oregon State. And one thing that Braylon Trice said is like, yeah, we were trying to get to him, and he was a lot heavier than we thought he was going to be. That was pretty tough. And that's not necessarily the case with Cam Ward, but that dude can fly in the open field. He's a really, really talented athlete. And so making sure that you can contain him to the best of your ability is going to be really, really important come Saturday.
Yeah, and I mean, even Zion Tupuola-Vaturi, EW's edge rusher, touched on it where it's going to be a track meet. And I'm not sure it'll exactly be a track meet, but, if you allow Cam to use his legs, as we've said, it can turn into a track meet where you're going up and down, up and down, up and down. And Washington still wins that game, right? Because you take Washington's offense over Washington State's offense, but that's almost a message to the defense to say, hey, maybe don't turn it into a two-way track meet, turn it into a one-way track meet where it's like you're chasing guys down and then letting Michael Penix and Ryan Grubb and everybody cook, whatever they want to do, whether it's steaks, shrimp, whatever you want to make, just let the offense do its thing, right? Because we touched on this, at least I remember touching on this earlier in the week, maybe it was last week. When was Washington's last complete game? from offensively and defensively. I still think it's Michigan State. We can make the argument for Stanford. Arizona was okay.
For Cal.
Oh, for Cal, right. But Arizona was okay. But even in all three of those games, it truly wasn't a perfect performance, right? I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, right? But a complete performance, right? It'd be a better word to use there. And it seems to be, state teams either get the good or the bad from Washington. Michigan State was on the wrong end. Yep. Arizona State and Oregon State were on the right end, in a matter of speaking, compared to those three games. Balance it out. Let the last game against the state team count for the most, right? You're planting the flag, you're doing all that stuff, metaphorically, right? I mean, Washington's not going to.
I was going to say, you chose your words very carefully there, didn't you?
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, habitual line stepper Jalen McMillan, I will still repeat that forever because, I mean, that was so stupid what they did in Pullman last year. And I say they, I mean Washington State, not they as in Washington players. I mean, Carson Bruner asked me to take a photo of him with one of his managers on the Wazoo team on the logo, and nobody was complaining. I'm like, oh, they're not disrespecting it. They're not like stomping on it. They're not doing whatever. But also because, again, Washington doesn't need to do that. They're not that type of program. It's like they can stand on business. They don't have to go do X, Y, and Z, over the top. But that's also why that 21 game was basically, if Wazoo is ever going to beat Washington in the next decade, this is the year. And Kalen DeBoer is no Jimmy Lake.
That is very true.
Actually, wait, Jimmy wasn't even on the sideline, so he's no Bob Gregory. Sorry. This is true. Can't give Jimmy all the strays on that one.
This is very true. I think that one other thing we really kind of do need to keep an eye on in this game is something that I know we've seen people in the comments talk about it. Is I really want to take a good hard look at the defensive tackles in this game, because we saw Javon Parker get a sack last year, the first of his career as a true freshman against Cam Ward and this Wazoo offense. And I think that this could be a really good game for the Huskies, just as a whole along the defensive line. Where you talked about Braylon Trice, you talked about all the things that he's done really well this year. But I think that in terms of just everything that they can do as a front, this could be a really, really big day for them. And I feel like we've discussed that for a while and haven't necessarily seen it pay off on the stat sheet. But we got to remember that Braylon Trice and Jeremiah Martin both just kind of went off in an insane way in terms of pressures last year against Cam Ward and this Wazoo team. And it's very possible that we see them do that again this year, just in terms of what we've seen them do to this point in terms of Braylon Trice and Zion Tupuola-Fatui now. And so those guys are going to get a lot of attention. Tuli Gasanoa has been fantastic against the run. And I think that this might be a game where we see somebody like MJ Ale or Javon Parker, Fatui Tuitele, one of those kinds of guys, just kind of be asked to do a little bit more as a pass rusher. And I want to see how they rise to the occasion in this game.
Right. And no disrespect to any of the other three or the other two, but I think Javon's clear and above the best pass rusher of that interior defense.
He's been fantastic.
And the weird thing was, I mean, to your point about Javon, he played 4 snaps against Oregon State.
Yeah, his snap count has been a little bit like all over the place. Also, I think that we saw a lot of Tuli in that game. We saw a lot of MJ Ale because those two are the best run stuffers on this team by a wide margin. We saw that some of the stats that ESPN posted during the game of just the difference when Tuli is on the field versus when he's not.
Right, and so I think no doubt about it, especially for your last home game at Husky Stadium, you don't want to rob Tuli of as many opportunities as possible. But you do also want to continue building to the future. And with Javon getting his first sack last season, Maurice Himes also got a sack last season. Maybe not. I don't recall specifically, but I swear I remember seeing Maurice Himes have an impact in that game as well. It's an opportunity where
while you're talking.
Well, this is an opportunity where the only way that happens is if we're right in the first segment here where the offense is putting them away early and you're allowing your defense to pin their ears back and maybe mix in some more guys that otherwise, because when you have close games, you want to keep your starters in to make sure the lead doesn't get any closer or the margin doesn't get any closer. Once you start to break away in the second half, that's when a guy like Maurice, a guy like Javon Parker, a guy like Carson Bruner, Carson almost, you can make the case he should be starting next to Eddie at this point. No disrespect to Alfonso Tupuola, but just the way that he's played, especially from a read and hitting perspective. I mean, he made some great angle reads against Oregon State to slow down Damian Martinez. So slowing down Wazoo's run game and or containing Cam Ward, both of those are going to be key points for a guy like Carson Bruner, where he clearly made those reads. He's proven he can. I'm not saying Alfonso can, and certainly Eddie's unquestioned, but maybe they experiment more with having more Eddie Carson Bruner combinations in this game. And especially, I mean, come on, Carson's a Washington legacy here, so he knows how to play in the Apple Cup. Not that Alfonso doesn't, but speaks for itself.
Because you're absolutely right there. But also I looked it up, and Maurice Hyden's sack came against Colorado. It came the week before.
Okay. But he did play against Washington State. I know that for
yes, he did. Yes.
He wore a very spirited undershirt after the game that I took a photo of and tweeted out on Twitter. That took Nick Harris's message of "we don't lose to Cougs" up just a couple notches.
Just a little bit, yeah. And speaking of which, that there are still tickets available for that game if you look on some of the secondary sites. And a good friend of mine that I play basketball with, shout out to my buddy Bryant, he told me, man, I was listening to your show and I hadn't checked out the Game Time app, and that was a great way when I went down to USC to get some tickets for a lot cheaper. And I said, hey, that's why we're here, to help hook you up with the best deals. And that's why Game Time is here, because buying tickets shouldn't be stressful. You shouldn't have to worry about when you're buying tickets to your next big event. With killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Some of the best things about it: last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, views from every single seat in the venue. It is truly amazing, because Game Time is obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up at the start of the event, and even at an hour after it starts. It is the place to find last-minute seats, find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Lars, you are never going to believe this. I remember who gets to go first this week, and it's you, because I went first last week.
I was about to be wrong. I was going to give it to you, but I mean, okay.
No, you're going first this week.
Oh boy. Well, I guess so. I'm going to cheat and just parlay the one that I teased earlier in the show, because I think Dylan Johnson will probably get between 5 and 12 carries. I think he's
so. You think so?
Play. But that's not my prediction.
I should say these are our bold predictions. I should probably mention that, because this is everybody's favorite segment.
Fair point. Well, for our audio listeners, you want to mention that, because for the people, the lovely folks that comment on YouTube viewers. Exactly. Yes. They can see what segment we're on. But yeah. So my first bold prediction isn't not Dylan Johnson, but it's somebody that will benefit from Dylan getting less carries in this game. And I think Tybo Rogers, I asked Ryan Grubb about the depth on Monday at running back, and it's kind of been a theme of the season where Tybo seems to be running back 2 of the guys that are healthy, right? Cam Davis, when he comes back, is still running back 1. I'm not questioning that. But of the guys you have currently available, this is a perfect opportunity, similar for Javon Parker last season, getting his first sack in his first Apple Cup. Tybo Rogers gets his first rushing touchdown as a Husky, finishes with 30 plus yards.
Okay, 30 plus yards a touchdown. I like that.
The touchdown is the bold one, not the 30. But
yeah,
got to throw in the yardage there to make it count.
No, I feel like Tybo Rogers and a first college touchdown has kind of become a tradition on this one too. Yeah. But I mean, hey, it's going to happen at some point, right? So we can't be wrong. We're just early.
Exactly.
So
we're never wrong.
No, never, ever. Just early. So I've got one that I don't know how much of a limb I'm going to go out on here, but I want to go with top receiver for Washington in this game, and I am going to give it to Jalen McMillan. I think that Jalen McMillan is going to be a big part of this game plan. They're going to, and it's something we've harped on this show on multiple episodes this week now, where I think that he's going to end up having to be a big part of the game plan. I'm going to go over 6 receptions, and yeah, let's go over 100 yards. I'm just going to say, if he's going to be the leading receiver, you got to hit that triple digit mark. So I'm going to say that, yeah, Jalen McMillan, leading receiver in this game. And let's add in, just to make it extra bold, because that is the segment, 2+ touchdowns for Jalen McMillan too.
Interesting. I like that. I mean, I would have picked a different receiver, and that's not a slight to Jalen. I was just going to take a different Jalen on that one, and maybe hope for the better results on my pick from last week. Thank you for JP for making that happen. Wasn't for a lack of targets. That being said, I'm going to go on defense. I'm not
on defense already. All right.
Yeah, because we get 2 in a row on offense. Let's mix it up a little bit here. I'm going to say, I've been right about this before, so I'm going to say 3.5 sacks, and they get the over. So Washington gets at least 4 sacks against Washington State.
See, I did have one of those too in terms of sacks, and it goes off something you said earlier. Braylon tries 2+ sacks. I think that we can almost parlay those together.
Yeah, we could parlay, because I mean I'm saying 3.5, 4 total. Price gets 2.5 of those. That's fine, because that still leaves Zion or Eddie or Jabbar, to get
you never know.
Half a sack. That's not a prediction. I'm just reading tea leaves here. I'm gonna stay on defense. I'm gonna steal yours because usually you do this. I am gonna say.
Are you going with a tackle leader?
Yes. Do you want me to leave? Or do you want me to
No. I don't have one. No, go for it.
Okay. So, I mean, the easiest one is Eddie, right? Eddie, 10+ tackles. But I am going to say Carson Bruner is the leading tackler at the end of the day. That's bold. That's bold. And I'm going to say 8+ tackles, because at times in season, they've actually had a bunch of guys with 7 or 8, where Eddie sometimes will pop off for 10 or 11. Eddie's the safe bet. The bold bet is Carson Bruner, 8+ tackles.
I can get behind that. So I actually have a similar one about just, in-state guys making plays in this game. And this has to be a parlay. So I'm going to parlay 2 anytime touchdown scorers together. Jack Westover and Devin Culp. Yeah. So I got to get those 2 in there, because it is going to be senior night for both of them, or senior day is an afternoon game. But getting both those guys, both seniors, they're both out of eligibility after this one. So getting both of them a touchdown as, in-state guys in their final game at Husky Stadium, I think that I don't want to call it a lock, but I think that would be a fun way to send both of them out. And because they're both tight ends, I feel like it's fair enough to call it bold. And anytime you're parlaying 2 anytime touchdown scorers, you can go out on that limb, I would say.
You know what? I like that, and I like where your head's at, and I'm going to go even further than that.
Oh.
So there's a lot of hoopla made about Jaden Daniels this week, or Jaden Daniels, right?
Are you talking about, because there is a Jalen and a Jaden. You're talking about the LSU quarterback.
Yes.
So yes, Jaden Daniels at LSU. Yeah.
Yes. So he had 6 touchdowns against one of the greatest defenses in college football last week, Georgia Southern.
Yeah.
Or Georgia State.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't keep a straight face. I'm sorry.
In an effort, and I was, by the way, for all of our YouTube and audio listeners, the amount of sarcasm in that comment that I just made, 100% real. So I'm not saying Georgia State is the greatest defense called. I feel like I shouldn't have to explain that, but apparently recently I've had to explain a few things. So just to be clear, against one of, it's a stat padding game, right? For Michael Penix, he didn't get over 200 yards last week. First time all season. First time, I believe, as a Husky that he didn't get over 200 yards passing. He's got to redeem himself a little bit here. 2 tight end touchdowns, 2 Jalen McMillan touchdowns, or 1 Jalen McMillan touchdown, 2 to 1 or Rome Odunze. Michael Penix throws for 6 touchdown passes and 400+ yards against Washington State.
I like that. I was going to go with the Penix one, but I feel like I took it last week. So I am more than okay with you taking that one. I only have one more, and I'm going to stick on the defensive side here. And I'm going to double down on something that happened last week. But I'm trying to figure out about the best way to have this one go down. I'm going to say Washington gets 3+ turnovers.
Okay.
I don't necessarily know if they're all going to be picks, all going to be fumbles, whatever it is, because I had the fumble recovery one last week, and I'm gonna chalk that one up. So you know what? Let's go here. Washington's going to have 3+ interceptions in this game. Who's going to get them? TBD. but I think 3+ interceptions in and of itself is bold enough because that's the whole point of the show.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think, and because I don't believe, do some quick math here, but I don't believe Cam Ward has thrown 3 interceptions in a game this season. Could be wrong on that. Let's see. You know what?
You've got the stats in front of you right there.
Exactly. Yeah. Let me just pull this up really quick.
But no, I think that one could be fun. I'll talk over you here for a second.
Well, no, I was gonna say the thing about that you can make that even more interesting is, does Jabbar get back-to-back interceptions after getting his first career 2 interception game? Which I don't know if he's had back-to-back in his career.
So I was going to say that I wouldn't be surprised if he gets one of them because he's just been excellent. So we can chalk him up for one, but the other 2, yeah, there's going to be a whole lot of moving parts there, I would say.
Wouldn't it be crazy if Cam Ward grad transferred to Washington next season?
You're just throwing that out there now.
Well, I threw it out there before the season thinking he would go somewhere else and Sam Heward would go to Washington State, but that's beside the point. We get to my score prediction. And Cam Ward has not thrown for more than 3 interceptions this season. He's thrown 2 against UCLA on the road, and otherwise he's thrown 5 interceptions. So you're basically saying he's doubling his interception total. Bravo.
All right.
That is bold.
So I'm being bold. Good.
Exactly. I just wanted to get the stats correctly there. Everybody's favorite segment, my always accurate score prediction. 52-17 seems fair.
Okay. That seems fair.
I had round about the same prediction for Arizona State, so I'm just trying to redeem myself here because, man, if they go 0 for 2 on my 50+ burgers, we got a problem.
Yeah, I think that's something you're going to end up needing to take up with Ryan Grubb there. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the everydayers out there for tuning in. We hope you had a very happy Thanksgiving filled with lots of stuffing, which is my favorite side dish. I don't want to give away the secret stuffing recipe that my dad has kind of passed down, which is just absolutely fantastic, but it's great. And that's my personal favorite side dish. So just want to make sure that's out there in the universe. But Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. All the everydayers out there, thank you so much. We really do hope you enjoy the show, and especially if you're new to the channel, because this is, we're just kicking into high gear here as December hits with everything else that's going to be coming down the line for the Huskies in terms of recruiting, transfer portal, Pac-12 championship game. There's so much heading your way. So please make sure you keep it right here on Locked On Huskies. And if you're new to the channel, there's so many ways to get involved with the show. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We are there. We are everywhere. Leave us a comment. Leave us a like on the video. 5-star review for your audio only. If you got any questions for us, again, comment down below. If you have any ideas for segments for the show, hey, we'd love to hear them. Anything like that, please feel free to stay engaged with us as much as you possibly can. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you after the game.